So before I introduce myself a bit further, I want you to focus on this quote here by Noam Chomsky, one of the founding fathers of modern linguistics. Language etches the grooves through which your thoughts must flow. We'll come back to this one later. May sound a bit pretentious, but it is important. So, as I said, Josh King, third year games design student at Falmouth University, coming to the end of it now, hoping to do MA Entrepreneurship. So I'm speaking to you later. Chief Design Officer at Hi9, a chatbot and AI design agency with a focus on persona of chatbots in order to achieve value exchanges. Also, Google Developer Group Falmouth, co-founder and organizer. So, going to be talking about NLP today. NLP is found in every chatbot, every good chatbot. NLP is an AI system, AI technology that understands natural language and is able to return the correct responses to allow human and machine conversation. So, Hi9 at the moment is using NLP and chatbots in all of these areas and quite a few more. Health, we're looking to get into the NHS, working with Epic. Battlefield, working with a company called Remedy in explosive ordnance disposal. Fitness, loneliness in old people's homes. Deep sea, marine, mining, and workshops, which we'll come to later. So, if anyone caught CES 2019, you would have noticed a theme. Digital assistants they're it now. This is what everyone is investing in. The Super Bowl, if anyone caught that, one of the biggest marketing opportunities and the most expensive for advertising was mostly digital assistants. You had, I think, Mercedes showed off their built-in car assistant, and you also had this short little video, which I don't know how to play.
Yeah, I didn't know you guys put rice in the microwave.
There are a lot of fails.
Like what?
Like,
Alexa, play my podcast.
when you heard that, did that surprise you? Mark seems excited. We need an Alexa dog collar. 4 dogs.
Ordering dog food. Ordering dog
You
food.
can bark all you want. I'm not paying for any more dog food.
Ordering gravy. Ordering sausages.
Hey, you better cancel that order.
Alexa hot tub. That sucked.
Let's up my music. Okay.
So you get the point there. This was shown at the Super Bowl, which is the most expensive place to put your company's logo. Right? It's ridiculous. And this was shown all over the world. So, there we go. This came out quite recently. I should say more British businesses to be using AI-powered personal assistants and secretaries than humans in 2019. Pair this with what Gartner said last year, which is by 2021, more money will be spent on chatbots and AI than apps. So apps was the revolution, chatbots, AI, NLP, once again, this is it. Our focus at Hi9 is on persona. If anyone's seen the film Her, it's about Joaquin Phoenix falling in love with basically an earpiece with a female voice attached to it. And it's not as far off as you might think. Amazon Alexa and Google Home, for the longest time Alexa outsold Google Home by a massive margin because Google Home conversations were designed by programmers and developers. Alexa, all the conversations and her persona was developed by rap artists, screenwriters, actors, stand-up comedians, and last year alone, Alexa was told 250,000 times, "I love you." Google Home was told it, I think, 9,000 times across the world. It shows just how important creating some sort of personality for your bot can be. So now, onto the main crux of this. Something I've been researching is how NLP, AI, NPCs, so natural language processing, artificial intelligence, non-playable characters, it's a mouthful, in video games and digital worlds and virtual environments can increase levels of immersion. Now, that is a mouthful, but we'll decode that in a minute. So, character persona in games. We can expand this to other characters. So what I want you all to do is think about your favourite character in a game, movie, or a film, or a book, series, anything you like. Now, we'll come to mine in a second, but what makes them unique to you? Why do you love them so much? Is it because of their catchphrases? Are they funny? Do they hardly say anything at all? Is it because they're the strong silent type, or are they just a bit goofy? Right? No matter what it is, this guy does it better, and I'm going to say that. This is from a very popular game series called Doom. For those of you who know Doom, it's a bit ridiculous. This character doesn't say a single word throughout the entire franchise, and I love him because he has so much personality. That may sound a bit weird. This character is called Marcus, from a very recent game called Detroit Become Human. A game I very much enjoyed, but it did have some pitfalls. This was a very dialogue-heavy game with what's known as branching dialogue trees, where you select options and it defines the character. Now, another video. This is Marcus. So, for those of you who don't know the plot to this game, Detroit Become Human is about AI servants gaining sentience and a large group of them wanting their own rights and humans basically going no. Marcus has run away from his owner, won't spoil the game, and he's found a group of rogue AI that have all gained sentience, and they're hiding away in a boat, basically.
Who are you? Fugitives. Just like you. My name is Josh. I'm Simon.
North.
Stacy, you've got different options.
This is Jericho? It's a refuge for those who don't want to be slaves anymore. And hiding is to stay alive. That's freedom to you? Humans hate us. Hiding is the only way we can survive.
There is no safe place for those like us. Humans need to kill us.
How many are you?
There are 19 of us still in working order. The rest were damaged escaping their masters.
Many try to reach Jericho. Few succeed. Humans have little pity for our kind.
Now, in 3 or 4 lines of dialogue from the 5 characters that I've talked in this scene, you don't really get much from their personality. Marcus, the main guy who's just arrived, what you get from him is that he's a bit miffed, and that's about it, really. However, and this is with thousands of writers working on it over countless hours, the next character says absolutely nothing, and all he wants to do is just destroy everything.
If stopping our energy production is what you want, then you need only to destroy this last filter, and Argent energy will no longer exist in this solar system. We will be back at square one. You have no idea what you have just done.
So just from that, you get that this man really just doesn't care about what anyone else thinks, and he's just going to do his own thing. And he said absolutely nothing. And I think that's very, very important, because from that clip, I get more personality from him than I did get from the 3 minutes of dialogue from the last game. What is it that we can achieve when we actually get conversations and dialogue and language right in these virtual environments? So, right now, how we interact with video game characters, in-game characters, is through a button press. That's pretty much it. Sometimes that button press is a choice of multiple button presses, as you saw in the first game, Detroit Become Human, and that can lead you down slightly different paths or give your character slightly different personalities. This isn't natural. This isn't how conversations work. Because of this, it can take us out of the experience. And when we're trying to create stories that we want to be invested in, It needs to be as natural and as realistic to what would occur in these situations as possible. So we come back to Noam Chomsky's point. Language etches the grooves through which your thoughts must flow. In order to achieve realistic experiences, language needs to be the focus. Human interaction with another sentient being is one of the most basic instincts. Even sometimes when the being is something that we don't get anything from in terms of language or conversation, like a pet dog. A lot of the time we'll have a 30-minute conversation with our pets and we won't get anything back from it, but it's a meaningful conversation and we enjoy it and we'll do it every day. So the point I make here, immersion is a subversion of our reality. Now, if this is the case, which I do believe it is, without natural language conversations, how can we say that immersive media is truly human? If conversation is a true human instinct, then immersion has to include conversation to be truly humanly immersive. So, before I can get into the effects of NLP, I first have to define immersion. Through the research I did into this paper, what this presentation is based off of, I found that there is no one accepted definition of immersion. There's a lot of debates online about sort of which one needs to be the focus. I did find, however, that some people have branched out and tried to define different types of immersion. Firstly, we've got something called tactical immersion, which is intense preoccupation with observation, calculating and planning. If you think about if you're playing a game of chess, you are fully preoccupied into planning your course of action ahead in order to win the game. That is what's called tactical immersion. Sensory immersion would be Engine House's virtual experience, which is a physical embodiment within that world. It is full sensory immersion. It's multi-sensory physical immersion. It's a physicality within the environment. The one that I focused on was emotional immersion, which is pretty self-explanatory, but it is where you are emotionally invested in the world, the people, the story, and what's going to happen within this environment. Albanos et al. It's a study done, I believe, about 5 years ago into immersion and emotion. Their results show that the emotional environment seems to be more engaging, natural, believable, and real to users than the neutral environment. That last part, real, really shocked me when I saw this, because the environments that they were showing, they were very rough. It was a stick man that you were talking to. It had no features. And it was, once again, button presses. That's the technology we had. But the one that resonated most with people and the one that people found to be most engaging was the one where it was based around a character and a story. An example of games like this would be Thomas Was Alone, which gets you invested in cubes. It's an entire story about cubes and rectangles going through a world trying to escape the world. And by the end of this game, I was crying. And it's about cubes. And that's it, really. It's a wonderfully genius game, but just because of the language it used and the story it told, I got invested in the story and the life and the hero's journey of some coloured cubes. So, in order to achieve NLP in games, I first had to look at how we create realistic conversations in chatbots. I did a couple sessions last year where I got the English Creative Writing Department at Falmouth University and some local developers and businesses to work together to design chatbots. In those sessions, I had worked with the Creative Writing Department and developers separately at workshops before, and I found that the writers created really interesting characters and personas, but they didn't do much. And the developers, the pure developers, created bots that were very solid and had a very clear goal in mind, but that was it. They had no substance to them. When I brought them together, ideas sprung up that I'd never even thought of before that were absolutely amazing. This is why I think this technology is perfect for games. Games is one of the areas where you have arts, technology, programming, writing all come together in one area. Chatbots and NLP allow for that perfectly. In my line of work, I've had to talk to stand-up comedians, actors, writers, linguistics professionals, psychologists, in order to learn how to create realistic conversations. So, how would an NLP conversation work in a virtual environment? Here we have the common game engine Unity. It's the most widely used game engine. I'm currently working on trying to get IBM Watson to work in Unity with their SDK. And IBM Watson has a huge library within its NLP. It's one of the most impressive ones out there. I think slightly more impressive than Amazon's one, but that's just me. Now, if I was to get this working, which should be in the next couple of weeks, how it would work is if you, for those of you who do play games, if you went into a shop, for instance, and you wanted to buy a sword, you're just a generic fantasy character and you want to buy a sword. At the moment, you go in, you press A, you scroll through a horrible menu, you press A again, you leave, and you've skipped all of the dialogue that the shopkeeper was going to say, and someone's probably spent quite a few hours developing that, like, shopkeeper's dialogue, and you've just ignored it because you don't care. With this technology, you would go in, you'd have a microphone, you'd go in, shopkeeper would say hello, you would respond completely naturally back and say hello back, and you'd have an entire conversation about what it is you wanted to buy. Shopkeeper would be able to, if you applied a vision API to it or some sort of machine learning, it'll be able to know, say, what class you were, what race you were, what sort of weapons you were carrying on you. And it would go, oh, I see you like these weapons. Can I interest you in a double-handed axe, perhaps? Then you would just say, yeah, I'd love to see them. You'd buy them and you'd walk out. That is a natural conversation that you would have on a corner shop, perhaps, right, or a clothing store. And it would happen within a game. It is a tiny change that makes all the difference. If we went even further with that and made full experiences based around these natural conversations, where your entire experience was about communicating with the characters and the people around you in order to create, in order for you to have a natural story-based experience, how invested could we get the players? So, before I leave, I'm going to leave you with this video. For that, through everything I've seen so far in games design and through chatbots, there's only one company that I've seen so far that are following something similar, and they're called Fable, and they released this video 2 weeks ago. It says a lot of what I've said already, but the one thing they miss is that these conversations don't have to be human, which is what a lot of people get wrong. NLP doesn't necessarily mean human realistic conversations, because in a lot of virtual environments, we're not talking to humans. We're talking to an alien creature from a far-off planet who might have completely different ways of speaking or views and anything like that. Human conversation does not equate to realistic conversation, but I still think it's quite interesting. So I'll leave you with this.
5 years ago, when we were starting Story Studio, we would tell anyone who would listen that virtual reality was an art form. Today, in every film festival in the world, Sundance, Tribeca, Cannes, Venice, virtual reality is showcased as true art. As we keep exploring, as we keep moving through, the next great art form isn't virtual reality. The next great art form is artificial intelligence.
One of the things I look for as an investor is a shift in human behavior. People are starting to interact with virtual beings on Instagram. They're going to concerts with holograms. The world of entertainment is going to just flourish because of this. And we're just moments away from it.
Whispers in the Night is a virtual being's experience. It's the first time that you get to have a conversation with Lucy, our virtual being.
With Whispers in the Night, we are asking more from our audiences than we've ever asked before.
You spend this emotionally connected moment with Lucy. It's very intimate. Literally talking into a tin can telephone where you can listen and then say things back to her.
Lucy just invites you into her space and she asks you,
Hey, can you hear me? Lucy starts to talk about how her grandmother used to say this thing, how most people are good. So she starts asking you questions about when was the last time you met a good person and what was their name and did you learn anything from them? We are expanding upon Lucy's senses, her voice, her hearing.
Computer vision to give the character eyes, natural language processing so that the character can speak to us.
We are really asking audiences to open up, to use their voice, to have a conversation with the character, which is this whole new amazing realm.
When you are interacting with Lucy and you're telling Lucy things, Lucy is going to remember.
She's storing those memories, and the potential to use that back in the larger story is incredibly powerful.
Lucy says, "Hey Cyan, how are you doing? What's been up since the last time we saw each other?" What? I mean, that's some futuristic, amazing, and we're now. It's not the future, it's now.
Right now we've got two completely siloed communities, with artificial intelligence going to Europe's, with the filmmakers and virtual reality storytellers going to Sundance. We need to come together and to share ideas and to create new work.
Technology and storytelling are always going to be paired.
So yeah, that pretty much says all of my points at the end there. Are there any questions? Cool.
Have you seen any games out there today? I know you've seen an example, but any kind of VR games that you would be able to try at home?
There are no games currently that have NLP integrations, no virtual reality games that have NLP integration, besides one called Event Zero, which came out, I think, mid-2016. It's the only game that I have found that actually has an interactive chatbot that uses natural language processing. It was a fairly successful game, but since then, no one else has done it. No.
You're going to be creating the first blockbuster then?
Trying to, yeah. It's the attempt.
Well, I'll accept a Tesla in exchange for promotion.
It was a long time ago that I saw Second Life. I don't know if it still exists. Could this lend itself to interactions in a Second Life to people?
Yeah, in a Second Life type environment, you could have non-player characters who you could approach and talk to as if they were a normal human being. You'd have to have some sort of intent going into the conversation. It couldn't be a completely open conversation.
Okay.
So you'd be approaching that character for a specific reason. Much like if you're going into a shop, you wouldn't just start randomly talking about bananas. The same would be said about a character within a virtual world such as that.
Yeah, can we get a huge round of applause for Josh, please?